Hello, everyone. Brigid Hopkins here, chapter 4 of our Winds of Spirit book discussion. And today we're doing our talk about wind patterns and cycles of change. And I would just like to give a moment for everyone who's on the call. I like to just center our energy and connect all of us as best we can so that we can become really present and in the moment, if you will. So just make sure if you're driving to keep your eyes open, but if you can, close your eyes and be in a nice seated position with your back erect but not locked in. You don't have to lock your spine. And just close your eyes and slowly turn your attention to your breath. And just feel how your breath is at the base of your nose. Observe where it travels in your body. And really being present to your exhale, what is ready to leave you? And we don't always need to know, but we're just bringing presence to the invitation. We're saying, you know, if it's time to go, it's time to go. And I'm going to bring you out on the next exhale. And just watching 2 more breaths. And I'd like for you to imagine with childlike spirit and nature and imagination that we are all in a field and each of us has brought a kite that represents our inner playfulness. So just really allow your imagination to take shape around what your kite would look like, what the color would look like, the texture, the size, the imagery. And we'll just space ourselves out enough that we can get a nice running start to bring our kite up into the air. And we're inviting the winds to join us and to play and to really lift our energy and lift our spirits and bring us all together in this moment. To be light in spirit, light in body, light in mind. And just if you will, for a moment, as you're watching your kite soar in the sky, because again, this is our imagination and everything is effortless. We don't have to wrestle with getting it up into the air. And the winds are supporting us. And just imagine that you can look around and see all of the other participants' kites. We can feel the breeze and the sun. And allow your senses to take over whatever else comes to you naturally. And ever so slowly, just slowly start to wheel your kite back in. Knowing that you have this now in your tool belt, so to speak. When you're ready, just ever so slowly open your eyes and come back into this moment. Thank you. So this week, as we're talking about wind patterns and cycles of change, there were a lot of things that I highlighted in the book that really struck me and caught my attention. One of those was the very first thing that I had shared on page 39 with all of you on the wall. And I loved how at the end of that paragraph, and I'll be happy to read that for you here. Long before the Weather Channel, along with observation, direct experience, and folklore, many tools were available to predict the changing patterns of nature. And how often do you take time to observe patterns in nature? You know, that really got me thinking about, I have 3 children, and they're 16, 15, and 12. But when they were young, we used to spend a lot of time together outside, and they would be able to tell me more accurately than the weather station what was about to change in the environment. Like, they could perceive it so clearly and so crisply because they weren't removed from nature itself. You know, we were always outside and participating in nature. And so it brought me back to that place of like, why am I not as active now that our children are growing? I mean, you know, I can be practical and say, well, we're in the car a lot and we have all these extracurricular activities. But even in those moments, I can find time to step away and re-engage with nature and just pay attention, just be the observer, right? And so right after that caption, there was the exercise to go outside, close your eyes, and slowly spin clockwise until you feel the air moving across your face. Did anyone do that this past week?
I have to admit that I did not read the chapter. So I still have yet to do that.
It's okay. I'm glad that you still attended. You're always welcome to attend, even if you didn't read it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did see. I'm behind even in watching every week's video of Renee doing the course for the 4 weeks. So I'm having to kind of do backup work at the same time that I'm trying to keep up. So, you know, I just do it the best I can.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all doing, aren't we, Cheryl? We're all just doing the best we can.
Right.
So try not to overwhelm yourself. You know, participate in the book study right now, since that's more active and alive. And then, you know, do the summer basics when you can. You know, maybe that'll help alleviate a little bit of the overwhelm for you.
Yeah.
Great. Did anyone else participate with that exercise this week?
Sorry, Brigid, I just joined. What was the exercise or the question?
Hey, Jim. I was sharing right after page 39 was the exercise to go outside, close your eyes, and slowly spin clockwise until you feel the air moving across your face. Did you have a chance to do that this week?
Yeah, I posted earlier, I think in the week, when we were picking which direction the cardinal wind was coming from. That was kind of what I did. I just stood in the middle of the street until like one direction just kind of dingled. I'm like, oh, okay, that's the wind to follow.
And how has that served you?
Actually, it served really well. I remember exactly what the direction was. I'm almost home. I can look it up. But it was like to just kind of slow down and just kind of sit gently into that space. And that's what I've needed over the past week. So it's worked well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I also I just do that a lot of times just when the wind's blowing. Like I'll just face into the wind and, you know, adjust using my ears to kind of find where it's coming from. And it's just almost like an anchor point. And it happens, I think, when I'm sailing too. I can kind of lean back and kind of adjust into the wind and see kind of where's the wind coming from. Is it going to be a lift or a header? And what do I need to do next?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun kind of using your body as the boat. There you are. Oh, that's Cheryl. Well, that's interesting. It's my feed. I'm back. Like, wow, it's so quiet over here, you guys.
Welcome back.
I had to go. Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering what happened, if I lost the feed or not.
No, it was me.
Okay.
So one of the things that stood out on page 41, and I'll just turn to that really quickly. Your spiritual magnetic north is always relative to your current situation and location. Think of your life as an island, a collection of personal experiences that stretches as far as your imagination. This is your personal map. You can navigate from yesterday or tomorrow in the same way that you cannot adjust your coordinates from France when you live in the United States. The wind always blows in the present. And that really stood out to me because, you know, sharing a little bit of a personal story, I used to walk around with the belief that I didn't know how to parent or be a partner because I grew up with a mom that had a lot of addiction issues and she wasn't present. And she didn't leave me a map. I mean, I so distinctly remember saying that, like, I never had a map to follow. I didn't know how to do these things that were like, they seem so commonplace for other people. And so when I was reading that in the chapter, I thought, wow, if I were paying attention to the wind, which is always blowing in the present, that is giving me a direction. It's giving me an opportunity to map my course. And it gave me this sense of like freedom and empowerment to think about it in that way, that I don't have to have somebody else's map, or I don't have to have someone else's directionals in order to be responsible and present in my own direction in life right now. Would anyone else like to share?
It's a shy group tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just talking and I didn't realize I was unmuted. Not muted. Anyways, I highlighted that the first time I read the book, and it was one of the things that's jumped out at me this time. And I've been going through a lot of rapid change. But I had posted something on my like Instagram or something that said, "It's okay. You just forgot who you are. Welcome back." And that was an energy that I've been in, and the wind has been bringing me back to life. And when I read that, you can't, navigate from the past. You can't navigate from the future. You have to be where you are. And I really felt that, and what I'm really working on is to not be in the future, and just to be here. And that's where seeds are planted and the change comes when it's ready. But just to be present. And the wind the wind work since I've been working with it this year has been extremely helpful with this process.
Yeah, that's great, Carrie. Thank you. And when you think about all of the rapid change that you've been experiencing, and again, from this excerpt that we shared about the wind always being in the present, what have you found to be the best tool to help you stay present while all of this change is happening? Because that can be really difficult.
Affirmations, and I would say I would say my affirmations that were really designed for the wind that I'm working with for the year. And that invocation that I had put out to Oya, who is my wind of the year, like, it's just, it's been amazing. And it's like, I don't have to try to be grounded. I feel like I'm borderline obsessed, but with like just the changes for my health that I'm working on, but it's like an out of body experience. And I'm just, it's working for me, and it's taking me through a lot of mental and physical, spirit, emotional, all layers. It's taking me, the invocation and the affirmations with the wind work have been taking me through all these blocks. And that's it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point, because the one thing, one of the things that I think, and Carrie and I are both working with the same wind, Oya, this year. Lucky us. Like, wow, we really needed a lot of zhuzh. But one of the things that Oya gives, and I never would have thought about it in this way, is compassion. And, you know, having compassion for reorienting things, right? Like, it can be so debilitating to have everything flipped upside down in an instant, or turning direction on the dime. And, you know, and then you wake up and you're like, what just happened? Where am I? And that's where compassion comes in. Like, trust, everything is going to be okay. You're not alone. This is totally purposeful and happening in the moment, and you are going to be okay. Be slow, kind, and present, right? And that has been such, and everything that got in the way of that nature, you know, of the nature of compassion, which it is very free and giving all the time, but anything that's in the way of that or blocking it, the winds are coming through and stirring up that silt, if you will. You know, like, this is in the way, that's in the way, this is in the way, so that you can stay way more present to, you know, as I said, for me, the message is compassion. For you, Carrie, it sounds like it's been change, you know, and learning how to do the dance there and working with the things that come up in between.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll just reply to that, what you said about compassion. For me, I've been for a while. I've been saying I need self-compassion, so that's to be gentler on myself, and that's to be, and that may have been at a time, but this time, in this present moment, the compassion for myself is to, she's doesn't want me to be soft on myself. It's making me stronger from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the depth of it, right? Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Deborah, I noticed that you were having a hard time getting unmuted. Are you able to? It looks like you're unmuted now. Would you like to share? All right, Deborah, I just unmuted you. Let's see if that worked. Okay, I'm not sure that it's an issue with Zoom, dear. I'm not able to hear you. Can you type in the chat box, Deborah, and we'll see if we can get that resolved for you? Okay, while I wait for her reply, one of the other things that I really enjoyed was on page 42. Unlike cartographers who relied on the early navigators to map the world, you must take on the roles of both navigator and cartographer and create your own map. In the early days of sailing, aside from learning the ropes and sails, sailors learned to orient themselves from the helm of the ship by learning the 32 points on the compass card. Are you guys with me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so one of the things that I thought about, and you know, it's a long portion, but that earlier part about being in both roles, right? The thing that came up when I read that was thinking about full responsibility. Because sometimes we're relying on, you know, so it would be easy to blame the wind or rely on another person to be helping us or guiding us or orienting us in a situation. But when we take on both roles, we're really assuming full responsibility, which is not the same as control, right? And so when I say that, okay, Deborah, let me see here. When I say that, what does that bring up for you guys? Like what, when you think about being the cartographer and the navigator, oh, I'm sorry that this is frustrating, dear. I'm not sure why that's happening. Maybe if you log out and then log back in, if there's any type of glitch, that'll resolve itself for you.
So, Brigid, when you bring up being the navigator and also the map maker, you know, playing both roles, what comes up for me, what I think of is, yes, as we're navigating along and we're playing all our roles, you know, if we're in the ocean or we're in the world, the wind comes up, the storm comes up. So we have to remain centered during that space and time and continue to navigate, to work with the wind or with whatever is coming your way. And I think that's when, you know, you make a plan, you know, as always in life, you make a plan, but the plan never goes exactly the way you plan for the plan to go. So it's remaining centered and working with the wind or whatever comes to you in your life path, and maintaining that, you know, headed towards true north when the wind is spinning you 1,000 different directions, is maintaining your center and doing it with self-compassion, which so many of us have such a hard time with. Kindness to self. That's what comes to me, is it would be simple. Wouldn't it be just simple if we set our path and just followed it?
Yeah, I was sharing with a friend today who made that same exact statement. And I said, but there's so much more richness in seeing our resiliency and our creativity, right? We get really creative when we get thrown those unplanned events. So that was great. Thank you.
Yeah. So what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah. Very, very true. We all have PhDs by now in how to do this thing called life. Deborah, were you able to get that resolved? Let's see here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I was just thinking that, you know, the path is always changing. So we, you know, just because we're on the path doesn't mean we know what's coming next. So I was trying to respond earlier to my experience of standing outside and rotating until I found which way the wind directed on my face. And I found that exercise very centering because I was doing it like a medicine wheel. I actually started in the north for some reason. I usually start in the east. And I sang a little song to each direction as I went around and just listened to feel which way the wind was, where it was touching me. So it was coming from the south on that particular day. And I think that exercise, first of all, I used something I knew, plus this was new for me, but it applies to something the way I use a wheel. So I found that very helpful. It also has given me more attention to the winds each day. So another day, 2 days ago, I heard the wind whipping around outside. So I looked, in the trees and the branches and everything was just, there was clearly a storm coming. So I stepped outside and I said, but where's the rain? And so then the rain started falling. And I thought, well, I'll just step down clearly outside from under the porch. But by the time I started to do that, there was a downpour of rain. It was just such a violent, short, maybe 15, 20-minute storm that did not hit all my neighbors. It just was so powerful. We got so much rain out of it. The trees are loving it. And it was a wonderful experience. The porch was so wet, because it's just a cover over the porch. Wow. There's a bunch of noise there. I don't know where it's coming from. And so I found the one little dry spot on the porch so I could just sit out there and listen to the rain and the wind and watch it and be with it. But I didn't understand because I looked to see, well, which direction is it coming from? And at first I thought it was the south again, which it did, but it was swirling, more like a spiral. One direction over here with these trees, another direction over here with these trees. There was no clear direction of the wind. It was such a, and I hear other places that ended up getting this little windstorm did have some damage. We didn't, but I enjoyed it. The thunder was just roaring, and the downpour of rain, the lightning cracking. It was a weird summer storm. It doesn't happen too often in Texas in this time of the year. So I appreciated it.
Yeah, it sounded like an ecstatic experience.
Yeah, it was.
Very cool.
But what do you do with this when the winds are going in many directions? How do you identify that?
That's a great question. How do we?
Is there a wind god that? Yeah.
Is there a wind god that comes in many different directions? Is that what you were asking?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, but what I'm wondering is if there were more than one present at that time. And so, that exchange of energy, or like the intersection, the crosswinds, they call that, But what's interesting is, like, what were you physically, like, it sounds like you were excited while that was happening, but do you recall exactly what you were physically noticing? Because you were in the south, and then this, ecstatic storm kicks up. So what was that like on the inside?
It took me away from all other thoughts. The wind is always in the present, and it brought me into the present.
Yep.
So I was clearing all other thoughts and just enjoying the experience. I really didn't put any labels on it. I just decided once I couldn't figure out where the wind was coming from, I just decided to sit and be with it, you know. And I was excited.
The reason I asked
I
is
enjoy storms.
the emotion. Yeah. So that's why I was just wondering if it brought up any emotion in your body.
Well, I've been working.
I love storms too.
I've been working with emotions a lot lately. So maybe that.
Did you say that you have been working with the emotions a lot?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's a delay
a little
in
bit.
my internet here.
It's on one of our ends. I'm not sure. It's fine. We're catching up or slowing down, whatever needs to happen. We're in wind time. Thank you so much, Deborah. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to jump in? It doesn't have to be about what I had shared, but I would love to hear what your experience has been while reading chapter 4.
I think one of the things that, once again, it's Kim from Canada. One of the things that resonated with me again, or kind of reaffirmed for me, reminded me, however you want to say it, or probably all of the above, but was that it's the line, the couple of sentences just before managing daily change. I'm working off of an ebook, so it's kind of hard to give you page numbers, but the quote, the lines I'm looking at say, waking up allows you to understand and cooperate with all types of wind. Healing the earth begins by healing oneself. And, you know, that's a message that keeps coming up for me, and has done, like I say, for many, many years. But I think, it's part of that surrender piece, that acceptance piece, that self-compassion piece, but also acknowledging that, I have to take personal responsibility for how I perceive things, how I react to things. Because I was jumping ahead a little bit further too, and another line stood out for me that I've heard before. I've actually used it in some of my group rules when I facilitate workshops, and that is that suffering is optional, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the way Renee puts it in, when she talks about it in the next part, she says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And I'd never thought of that way. Like it saying that pain is inevitable kind of acknowledges that, life is going to have its ups and downs, right? That we are going to go through different emotions. We are going to, experience different things. And part of that, those experiences, those deciding whether or not, we're going to learn from them. We're going to allow ourselves to heal from them, because I think it can be a choice, although maybe not so much a conscious choice all the time. But also, how are we going to allow ourselves to kind of get into the depths of suffering, or are we going to, kind of try to keep our heads above water, I guess, or am I going to try to keep my head above water and learn from the experience, and give myself permission to just kind of go with the flow, right, and learn. But a lot of what I'm reading, like I say, is almost like an affirmation of other things that I've learned, and one other way of looking at things. But the way that Renee words some of these statements, they really kind of, it's like, oh yeah, of course, you know. She's very good at explaining or giving, you know, expanding on how, you know, how something that might sound a little bit cliche is actually, you know, holds a lot of truth, right? So.
Right, without using caps and exclamation points.
Yeah. It's nice and gentle.
Like, do you see this? Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It's not, she's not trying to throw us into the hard winds, if you like, but
yeah,
it's like those friendly, gentle breezes that she talks about blowing in from the west. So yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean, how long can you stand in those harsh breezes, right, before you run for shelter?
Yeah, yeah. How long do you want to let yourself do that? Yeah.
Yeah, be battered. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking for transformation, not abuse.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That is right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kim. Would anyone else like to share?
Can I speak again?
Yeah. No, Deborah,
Okay.
you're not allowed.
I have well, I want to make sure you can hear me. I have a question about creating our own map with the winds. I was wondering if you could speak to that. I love maps, especially nature type maps. And I'm just curious about how this works with creating your own map with the winds.
Well, the reason I put it on to stop my video was to help with our connection. I just wanted to share that. That's why I'm not looking at you directly. That's a really, really good question. And I think the interesting part about it, so I'm not trying to skirt out of the question, but the truth that I have seen time and time again with doing the mastery courses and just the coursework in general, everyone's map gets laid out differently. The most prevalent piece of the map work is showing up consistently. Right? So with all relationships, so thinking of the map as being a type of relationship, we're learning how to walk in a different way. That's building a relationship with something we can't see, but we're feeling. And I mean, we can see the wind, but sometimes we can't, right? Like when there's doldrums, we're not seeing anything and we still have to trust that it's there, right? And so it's that consistency of presence, intentionality, that willingness to do it even when it's difficult. Like today, you know, I'll use myself as an example. I'm not feeling well, but I have made a commitment to the winds and our community. And I did check in with myself, like, do I have enough resources where I can still be in service? Yes. Okay, then I'll show up. That's part of my map. Part of my map is learning how to be present and show up even when it's difficult for me. And so this cold is not a coincidence because this is where I'm walking right now. So I hope that helps it a little bit. It's kind of a difficult question in the sense that it's so personal.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for asking. It's a great question. One of the things that I do want to chime in about here, you know, on page 42, she starts to describe, well, there's two things on page 42. One that I really loved was when she was talking about to get from point 0 to point 360 requires many stops along the way. By removing resistance at each point along the perimeter, you can watch the winds of grace in your sail and move forward or reposition your rudder to shift course. And what that really reminded me of is that there is no pretense of doing this right. Each one of those markers in the 360 degrees is another chance. right? It's another opportunity. It's another experience. It's another way to readjust if we need to, or stay the course. Maybe we'll go 3, 4, 5 notches and we're going to stay the course because it's working. And then now we have new information, or, you know, new intercession, if you will. And so now we have to change the direction a little bit. And that is like such personal freedom for someone who loves to perfect things. Like everything has to be just so. So if the old Brigid would look at that 360-degree diagonal and say, by this point, I have to do this, and now I have to do that, and now I have to do this. So it would almost be like an obsessive planning and not leaving any room. There would be no room for what really needed to happen to transpire. And so I loved that. And so what I had written down was, it removes the idea of having to do it right. Instead, it invites us in being with what is and taking charge of our next step. So being intentional in our next step while also being present to what is happening. So that was the one thing from page 42. And the other is that when she starts describing the cardinal winds and symbolizing the thematic cycles of experience, so east being with the mind, south being the emotions, west being the physical, and north being spiritual. I know that we're all coming from different traditions. And so I was just wondering, does that align with your tradition, or is this a new level of learning for you? Is this going to take a little bit of time to adjust? Because, you know, Deborah was sharing about her medicine wheel. So the medicine wheel has its own meanings based on the tradition that you're in, that you're working with it in. So that was just like a curiosity point for me. So go ahead and jump in, guys. I love hearing from you.
I would say, I mean, for me, the tradition of the wheel, you know, is good, and I'm comfortable with the emotions in the south and the body in the west and the spirit in the north really resonates with me, as well as new beginnings in the east. I would add, you know, my very favorite sentence from this chapter is the very last sentence in the chapter. And it's, you cannot reach a destination if you plot your course from the bridge of someone else's ship. You must determine your own location if you want to navigate through life successfully. And that resonates really strongly with me through every single thing we're talking about, because, you know, I for one, I don't know how anybody else, but I was raised as a people pleaser. And I've been, you know, when you're trying to please everybody, you can't please anybody. So getting the strength or the power to set your own course and stick to your own course and allow grace to find you wherever you are on your course, and maintain it, making little adjustments here and there. But to me, that's really, really powerful. And it's very helpful in my journey.
Thank you, Nancy. I loved that one too. I had highlighted it as well. Yeah, it's a very, very succinct reminder. And yeah, the whole, by Deborah, thank you, the whole people pleaser. Yeah, I think that kind of dances along the line of the caregiver, right? Like the caregiver and the people pleaser, they kind of intertwine and do a little intricate dance at times, for sure. Yeah.
I would like to speak to that. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, was that same exact line. And what I had written about it is, there's that old saying about, like, it's a yoga thing, but dharma, and like you can look at that in a deep way or a very superficial way, but that you can't live someone else's dharma except your own, or you're going to do it imperfectly. But you have to live your own dharma, and you have to, so that really resonated on that, you know, not reaching a destination, plotting the course from someone else's ship. And when I was, what was going through my mind is that same thing about being present. Where are we? And so sometimes I have a lot of things I want to do. Like I'd like to write. I like to write a book. I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. And maybe I will do all those things, but like things that I want to do. But right now, that may not be what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that can create a lot of resistance for me when I am not doing it or I'm not making progress towards it. I'm learning to, be okay with that because, the journey's not over and you can't do everything. You can't do everything all at once, or it's all going to be scattered. It's all going to be, a chaos. So like, what can I attend to right now? And what should I be attending to right now? There's like a lot of awareness that has to happen in the present moment for that. And I know I've been rushing myself in a lot of ways. And that spoke to me about, your own location. Now, where are you right now? And what is the rush? What is the rush? And of getting to point B, or getting to point Z when you might only be at point G. Like you've got to, go through a few more lessons and letters and, yeah. You get the point.
Yeah, very much so. And, and I think the beautiful part about what you're sharing in respects to the Dharma, and just a little bit earlier in the chapter on page 43, she was talking about as you orient to life using your body's signals, you will become more receptive to the messages generated by your internal navigational system. And that reminds me of, we're speaking about having all of these things that are, they're passions for you. They're parts of you that want to be expressed and known in some way, right? Like you want to share them in the world. But if we go back to our body, that will be an indicator of what is the right thing for us in this moment, as opposed to the mind, which is like, you should have had it all done yesterday, sweetheart. Like, why are you, right? The body is so much more clear. Yeah.
Yes, and the mind will tell you, well, you're just not organized enough. You're not applying yourself. You're too lazy, like, or, all of these things. And it's like, well, maybe it's just not the right time. And you're gathering information, lessons, life. It's just not the right time. And that is a level of acceptance that has to happen. And there are things we need to push through and say, yeah, maybe I am not organized enough and I'm not applying myself. But guess what? If I apply myself towards the things that I want get done, and maybe some things are just meant to be hobbies and not jobs. And that's a big awareness.
Carrie, you let me know when you figure that one out, because
I don't think I said I'm on letter G. I get a long way to go.
Even my dogs agree with you. They're like, what? Hobbies, hustle. It's all got to get done. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Those are great points. Thanks so much. Anyone else? All right. Well, I'll end with this one One final thought. It's not the end of the chapter, but it is something that I think is really important. You know, we're in a community, we're reading this book, we're sharing insights, we're sharing experiences that are happening from, you know, reading the book and being together. And, you know, one of the things that she talks about is tools are useful only when applied. If you are lost in the woods and your compass is tucked away in your backpack, it serves no purpose whatsoever. You must use it to find your way home. Similarly, reading this book might be a great beginning toward unpacking your compass, but results require action. Your emotions are like the compass in your backpack. Even though you are not paying attention to it, the needle still seeks to point north. You must hold out the compass, focus your attention, and apply your skills if you truly desire to get back home safe and sound. As long as you are alive, the winds will continue to blow. They can either disrupt or soothe you. When the wind blows, your task in awakening is to learn to sway and bend like a willow tree rather than break. And I just, like, everything in me softens when I read that, because it provides, like, yes, we're being given an opportunity to take action with these tools, but the reason behind it is so that we can learn to be flexible, right? And it's just like showing up at yoga or, you know, walking around the park, riding your bicycle. It's all to strengthen you and also to keep flexibility. And there's another word that I can't think of right now for the muscular body, but, you know, and that's what the winds are helping us with. That's what this experience of being in the community is helping us with. It's another tool. So the book is one tool, but being together in the community is also a tool. And if we're not taking action, like being on the call or, you know, sharing on the wall, whatever, then we're missing a part of our whole toolkit, is how to be in community and learning how to be, you know, trees are in forests together. Very seldom do you see one solo tree. And when you do, it's like, oh, that poor guy, like, where are all the friends? You know? And so that's what it made me think about when I was reading that. It's like, oh, this is another one of our tools is learning how to be in a community with one another. So when I was speaking with Renee about the pace of the book club and, you know, we're getting ready to do the cardinal winds themselves, I had asked, you know, do you want to do all four or do you want to do one at a time? So the next call will only be reading from the first part of part 2, from what direction is the wind blowing, through to page 52. So we'll be learning about the first cardinal wind. Oh, that's the introduction, excuse me. I have glasses on too, you guys. I have no excuse. There we go. It's page 56. So we're reading the introduction, and then we're going to read about the cardinal wind of the east for our next call. Does that sound okay with everybody? I'm going to come off mute for a moment, and we'll say our goodbyes.
Sounds good.
Great.
Sounds good.
Oh, hi, Jim. There you are.
Yep.
Great.
I think that'll be helpful. All four wins, that would be a lot, especially for somebody who's not worked with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's what I agree.
Good plan.
Yeah, I agree. So great. Then it works for all of us. And, you know, let's just take a moment. We put our kites up in the air when we began. And I would just like to take a moment in gratitude once again for everyone who was able to attend today in person, and also those who were able to attend energetically. And just wishing everyone a really peaceful and enjoyable rest of their week and weekend. And thanking the winds for their presence in our daily lives. And thanking our bodies for all that they give each and every day to every one of us. And so it is. Thank you. I hope everyone
Thank
has
you.
a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And I just want to share that I did go through the end and check the chat box to make sure that there were no questions from anyone. Until next week, take care.